Hello and welcome to my channel. My name's Cece. I'm interested in true crime, so that's what I make videos about. So thank you for stopping by and let's get straight into it. My first case is a huge one involving one of the UK's most famous men in the 90s and 2000s, and that man's name was Michael Barrymore. There's recently been a programme on Channel 4 called Barrymore, the Body in the Pool, and that programme is actually about this case. It's really interesting, so I would encourage you, if you enjoyed this video, to go and watch that one. The fact that this video remains unsolved to this day is absolutely unbelievable, and by the time you get to the end of this video, you'll realise why. Michael Barrymore's birth name was Michael Kieran Parker. He was born on the 4th of May 1952 in Bermondsey, London. He grew up with a sister and a brother and his mother Margaret. His father lived with him until he was 11 years old, but he was an alcoholic and he left the family home and Michael would never see him again. In 1969, when Michael was just 16 years old, he actually went to be a redcoat entertainer at the holiday resort Butlins. After working as a redcoat for some time, he decided to go and work at the West End as an entertainer. He'd obviously honed his craft and had a talent for it. Whilst working at the West End in various shows, he met a lady called Cheryl Coughlin. Cheryl was born in 1950 in London. She was a dancer and an entertainer, and she met Michael in 1974 whilst they were both performing in the West End. 2 years later, they would be married. In 1975, Michael makes an appearance on a talent show called New Faces. People who won that show would often go on to be quite big celebrities in the UK, and when Michael won his, of course the offers came flooding in. In 1983, he was given his own sketch show, and then in 1986, he was given the role of presenting Striking Lucky. By the 1990s, Michael is at the top of his game. He can pull in figures of up to 18 million viewers. It was said that the mastermind behind Michael's career was his wife Cheryl. They were both entertainers. They knew what an audience wanted and they were able to cater to that. And between the two of them, Michael was a huge superstar. There were a few rumours going around that he might be gay, but there's nothing substantiated. It's really just tabloid gossip. However, in 1995, Barrymore walks into a gay pub, the White Swan in London's East End, and he interrupts a drag act show. He asks if he can sing some songs, which they agree to. It's Michael Barrymore, and he starts to sing. He gets to the song New York, New York, and we all know the famous line, "Start spreading the news, I'm leaving today." Well, he sings, "Start spreading the news, I'm gay today," and he takes off his wedding ring and he throws it to the ground. Of course, within a matter of hours, this is tabloid information, and everyone knows what's just happened. Apparently, even though there were rumours going around that Michael might be gay, his wife Cheryl apparently had absolutely no idea, so it was a huge shock to her when this came out. They separated not long after, and by 2 years they were divorced. In the 90s, being gay was still quite taboo, so after this story broke, there was no guarantee that Michael would still have a career after this. As it happens, the UK public welcomed him with open arms. They didn't care about his sexuality, only the tabloids did, and he went on to score more big television deals, and he even won some awards voted for by the public. So Michael is in a pretty good place. He has a partner, and he also has a great career. Now let's move on to the incident that's now infamous that took place in March 2001. On the 30th of March 2001, Michael and his then boyfriend Jonathan Kenny went to the Millennium nightclub in Harlow, Essex. Whilst there, they partied with the locals and they invited a few of them back. One of those locals was Stuart Levesque. Stuart Levesque was a 31-year-old meat factory supervisor. He was a husband and a father to 2 children. There's nothing much else known about him online. Whenever you try to research him, it actually just comes up with Michael Barrymore. It's very difficult to find details about Stuart because Michael's name and face appears every time you try to find out about him. All I can tell you is that he was a dearly loved family member. So, Stuart was out with his brother Keith at the same nightclub as Barrymore, the Millennium nightclub. Barrymore invites Stuart back to his house, but he doesn't invite Keith. So Stuart decides to go with them. He leaves Keith in the nightclub. When asked, his friends and family believe that Stuart might have left just so that he was able to brag the next day that he'd been to a party at a celebrity's house. The group of locals all arrive at Michael's house. Now there's a list of names here I'll read out so that I don't get it wrong. The list of guests were Michael himself, Jonathan Kenny, Justin Merritt, his sister Kylie Merritt, James Futers, Simon Shaw, Claire Jones, Kelly Campbell and Stuart Levesque. The party wouldn't be going on long before something absolutely terrible happened. The body of 31-year-old Stuart was found in Barrymore's swimming pool by Barrymore. Now, what actually happened to Stuart? First of all, there's Jonathan Kenny's story. Jonathan, if you remember, is Barrymore's boyfriend at the time. Jonathan Kenny says that at 3:50 a.m. he's in the master bedroom with Justin Merritt, another one of the guests. At 3:50, Barrymore walks into the master bedroom, changes into some shorts and says that he's going to go to the jacuzzi. About 5 minutes after that, Barrymore apparently comes back in and says there's a body in the pool. Barrymore's story, however, is a little bit different to that. He says that at 4:30 he went into the master bedroom to get changed into his shorts and went back out again to the jacuzzi, and 5 minutes later he came back to say that there was a body in the pool. Now there's a good 45 to 50 minute difference between when Barrymore said he went into the master bedroom and when Jonathan Kenny said he went back into the master bedroom. So what happened between those 45 minutes? Neighbours, however, reported hearing screams at 5 a.m, which is again another 15 minutes after the absolute latest time that Barrymore claims to have found the body. So there's 3 differing stories. Which one's true? Stuart's body was pulled from the water by the guests. They ring an ambulance at 5:48 a.m. Now something to note here is if the neighbour's story is the one to believe, then that's a good 48 minutes between screams and the ambulance being called. What happened in those 48 minutes? By the time the ambulance arrives, about 10 minutes later, Barrymore has up and left the premises. Stuart Levesque is pronounced dead at 8:23 a.m. What was supposed to be just a fun party for him to be able to brag to his friends about at work the next day ended up in him tragically losing his life. Stuart's body is taken away, and on the 31st of March 2001 a post-mortem is performed by Dr. Michael Heath. He decides that there are no significant injuries to Stuart's body and he likely drowned in the pool, and he decided that that was his cause of death. The coroner didn't seem too convinced by this story, however, and he actually ordered another post-mortem to be carried out on Stuart's body. Further tests were done on Stuart's body, and they actually brought in an expert on death by drowning, who decided that this death was not caused by drowning. There were findings that were considered abnormal, including pinhead-size hemorrhages around the eyes, which match up with death by strangling or some sort of pressure to the neck. He also had cocaine and MDMA in his system. The pathologist's report showed that there was extensive hemorrhaging around the anus and there was tearing of the anal wall. These kind of injuries would be brought about by something like a bottle being inserted into the anus forcibly, and there is also no doubt that Stuart was alive when these injuries were sustained. There was a pool thermometer seen in some of the photographs that police took at the scene of the crime, which the pathologist agreed that is something that could have caused those injuries. As it happens though, that pool thermometer went missing shortly after, and I'll come to that later on in the video. In June 2001, Justin Merritt and Jonathan Kenny are both arrested on suspicion of murder, but no charges are made and they're released. On the 9th of September 2002, the inquest begins. This is an opportunity for witnesses to come and to tell everyone what it was that they saw that night. Kylie Merritt, one of the guests, said that she witnessed Michael Barrymore rubbing cocaine onto Stuart's gums, and when asked if that was something that Stuart seemed to want to happen, she said it didn't look like it was. He was moving his head away to try to stop him. Barrymore denied doing that, however, and says that there were actually no drugs at the party. The inquest asked why Barrymore didn't jump immediately into the pool to try to save Stuart. Barrymore claimed that he couldn't swim, so he had to go and get someone else. Now, in parallel to this inquest, Cheryl, Michael's ex-wife, actually releases a statement to say Barrymore can swim because her own mother had taught Barrymore to swim years before. She said that there were witnesses and photographs to prove that Barrymore could actually swim. When the inquest asked why Barrymore left the scene, he said that he panicked. He saw the body, he didn't know what to do, so he just panicked and left. Now, the fact that he maybe lied about the fact that he couldn't swim and also left the scene before the police or the ambulance even arrived made Barrymore look pretty bad. His reputation was not great at this point. He did not look very good. So the inquest concludes as unexplained. It seems the witnesses were either unable or unwilling to offer any useful information, so Stuart's family are left with no answers at all. In terms of Michael's career at this point, he doesn't really have one. His contracts have been finished and the UK public don't really want to see him anymore, so he moves to New Zealand for a couple of years, probably to lay low. A few years pass and Michael returns to the UK. In 2006, he goes on to Celebrity Big Brother. He enters the house to rapturous applause. He's actually seen crying. He's so overwhelmed by how happy everyone is to see him. He comes second in the show, and he must have thought at that point, this is it, I'm back. My career is going to be back on track. It was at that point that Essex Police announce that they are reopening the case. Barrymore says he's pleased that they're reopening the case and he hopes that they make progress. In June 2007, Merritt, Kenny and Michael Barrymore are all arrested on suspicion of sexual assault and murder. However, again, they're released without charge due to insufficient evidence. Speaking of evidence, the reason that there is so little evidence in this case is due to Essex Police. They admit that they did not secure the crime scene to a standard that they should have. On arrival, guests were saying that this was a tragic accident and Essex Police just took that at face value, so they just treated the scene as such. There were items at the scene that had Stuart's blood on that were not properly investigated. Michael Barrymore's PA was actually allowed to go back to the crime scene and was witnessed moving things around. The police know for sure that two key items of evidence were removed from the scene. One was a door handle and another was the pool thermometer, as I mentioned earlier. It's thought that these were taken away in a bid to remove evidence. DCI Jennings of Essex Police said this year that he believes that Stuart was assaulted in the jacuzzi and then he was either unconscious or dead and they dragged him into the pool to make it look like an accident. Since then, nothing much else has happened in this case. It's still unsolved and it still remains open. Barrymore signed up to Dancing on Ice in 2019 and was already practicing when he broke his hand, so he had to pull out. £40,000 has been offered as a reward for information in this case, and Essex Police are hoping that 19 years later, loyalties have changed and that witnesses will come forward with new information. And that's really as much information as we have on this case, but there's so many questions. What time did Michael Barrymore actually find the body? Because there are two differing accounts. Can he actually swim? Was that a lie? Where did the two items go? The thermometer and the door handle? Claire Jones, a guest at the party, said that she witnessed Barrymore rummaging around drawers and he left with a bundle of material underneath his arm. What was that? Why did they take so long to call the ambulance? Stuart's shorts were said to have only small amounts of blood on them, but according to the post-mortem, those shorts should have been covered in blood due to the injuries. Did they change his shorts before the ambulance arrived? And was that why it took so long for them to call the ambulance? The fact that we know that Stuart was raped and murdered and that no charges have been brought in this case must be incredibly frustrating for Stuart's family. I believe that if those two key pieces of evidence hadn't have gone missing, DNA would have linked exactly what happened and they would have been arrested within the matter of a few days. Stuart's father, Terry, throughout this has campaigned tirelessly to get justice for his son. He's part of the reason this case keeps being reopened. He describes himself as being exhausted, but that he will not stop until his son has justice, and it must be so hard for him seeing Barrymore performing on stage every now and then, trying to make his comeback, when he knows that something happened at that house and no one has been brought to justice. I really do hope that loyalties have changed, as the police say, over 19 years. Maybe someone will come forward with some new information that could lead to an arrest. It's completely tragic that Stuart, who thought he was going to a party, ended up being brutally murdered just because he wanted to meet a celebrity. Well, that's all from me. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this case. And please do give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you enjoy watching true crime videos. And that's all from me. Bye bye.